and welcome to Voices of Truth One-on-One with Hawaii's Future, brought to you by the Kiwani Foundation. I'm Maha Cardwell, and here we are today in Honolulu on a beautiful day in Hawaii. And I'll tell you this, we have a fascinating guest on the show, so let's go on over here and meet her. Ashley, how are you?
Hi.
Aloha.
I'm doing great.
Ashley Maha, did I say your name right?
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. And Ashley, tell us where we are today.
We are at Magic Island.
Magic Island, a
Yes.
beautiful place it is, and Waikiki is right over there. Wow, all right, well Ashley, we wanted to have you on the show today because you are an expert in one particular issue or topic that's in the news right now. Tell us what that is.
So my specialty is human trafficking.
Human trafficking.
Yes. I have lived experience in human trafficking, and part of my pathway to there was also having experience in domestic violence, substance abuse, incarceration, and poverty. So that unfortunately led me into human trafficking, and I was able to get out of it. Then I got my degree in criminal justice and continued on in the fight, and I've been involved in figuring out how we can combat what happened to me for our future generation.
So Ashley, you're a specialist in what way? I mean, what's your job?
So my job is as a consultant in human trafficking, and what I do is I consult federal agencies, nonprofits, and the general public about what human trafficking is and how we can combat it. I do specialize in what human trafficking looks like for indigenous communities, so that's Native Hawaiians and as well as American Indians and Alaskans.
Wow, how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this since, well, I've been involved in the fight since 2015, but I really came into my own as a consultant in 2020. So it's been a pretty fast journey for myself because it took me a really long time to understand what happened to me. And once I understood what happened to me, I was like, I have to fight this.
You got to make sure that this doesn't happen to a single other girl, right?
Yes, or girl, boy, they,
anybody.
them, anyone.
Anybody.
And I think that's really important to note is that I was aware of human trafficking in 2015, but what I wasn't aware of is how my story fit into that. And so it showed me that there is so much, misunderstanding surrounding what human trafficking is and, the levels of exploitation. And so that's where my passion is that sex trafficking and labor trafficking look completely different than you might originally perceive it to be.
Wow, all right. So right now in Hawaii, Ashley, there is something that is in right at the topic of the news cycles, which is murdered and missing Native Hawaiian women and girls, yes?
Yes.
And actually this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but this has been happening, this has been going on for a long time. But it really hasn't gotten the notoriety it needs to or deserves until recently for some reason. And why do you think it's all of a sudden popped up in the news?
I think that it's popped up in the news because Native Hawaiians are actually being recognized. For so long, we weren't included in that MMIWG crisis, even though our Indigenous brothers and sisters recognized us as people, and we just weren't included in that crisis.
How long do you think this has actually been going on, Ashley?
Since the start of colonization.
You're saying that this started actually when Westerners like Captain Cook and his crew arrived into Hawaii, right back then, yes?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, there has been documentation in history that shows that. We were such a thriving people, hundreds of years before that point of contact. But we are also such a loving and accepting people, and so it was easy for us to, kind of welcome these people onto our land and really kind of try to work with them. And they kind of took advantage of, that aloha spirit that we all give. And it turned very ugly for us. And there's been documentation of sex trafficking of children from that point of contact.
What effect do you think that has had on the history of Hawaii?
I feel like that effect, it's been so vast because it's hard to explain, the deterioration of our culture in, one sentence or one segment. And so much was stolen from us from that period of time, from our language to our cultures to how we practice to, everything that made us Hawaiian. And so that being stolen and that erasure of what it means to be Hawaiian, it allows for someone to come in and tell us who we are, how to act, how to be. And unfortunately, that caused the deterioration of our people. There's so many things that go into the deterioration of Indigenous people that it's hard to name just one. And so when there's such prevalence of all of these issues like homelessness and substance abuse, mental health issues with access and diagnosis and treatment, as well as sex trafficking and labor trafficking, all of those things combined kind of creates this melting pot that you can't really point to one issue that is causing the decline of a people. And so it's kind of invisible because what is it? What is going on?
Do you think that going on back then, starting with the arrival of Captain Cook and the impact it had back then, do you think that impact has carried all the way forward to today?
Absolutely carried forward to today because, the erasure of our people happened at that point of contact. We were told that there was a bigger, better way to do the things that we were doing. And so all of our culture was kind of squashed. And because we are, an oral culture, if we're not allowed to speak to each other, to say our mo'olelo and, speak our language, we lose it. And we weren't allowed to speak it or share or, any of that.
So the ability to actually bring that forward, keep that alive, got crushed.
Absolutely got crushed.
Wow.
And when you erase the identity of a person, like I said, it allows anyone to be able to come in and tell you what that identity should look like. And that's where you get kind of the erasure of our culture and, the introduction of predators being able to come in and change that.
Yeah, so if I understand what you're saying, Ashley, is people came in and literally changed the story saying, no, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
It was like this instead. And what they gave as this instead was a completely sanitized version, as in that never happened.
Yes, that
Wow.
never happened. It's not happening. You are wrong. The Missing and Murdered Native Hawaiian Women and Girls Task Force was created to capture the data. That was created specifically because there was no data out there about the issue. And so we kept talking about what we were seeing as a community, but we couldn't prove it, to the people in power who had access to funding to help fund the solutions.
In other words, you heard about it from the people that it was happening to.
Yes.
Okay, but there was no data that the people in the offices would go, we want to see the data.
Yeah, and they wanted to see the numbers. And, to people in power, the numbers are what's important. Like, what is the issue? What dollar amount can we assign to this to fix it? But for us, it was the people that were the most important. Like, I don't care if it's 1 or 100, that's one too many for me.
Ashley, you actually had a hand or part in helping put this report together, yes?
Yes.
Tell us about that. What was your part?
My perspective on the missing and murdered issue and how we can overcome it is by talking to the recovered. And I myself am a recovered person who was missing at one point and felt trapped to a lot of the issues that we find our other Native Hawaiian people trapped in. And so I felt like it was really important to bring the input of what happened to me to give a little bit more of a picture of what could possibly happen to others. And then we can use data from other organizations for things that didn't happen to me and get that full picture of what's happening.
And put it all together.
Yes, the report is online, and for me, the preliminary report paints a very small picture of what is going on. There are obvious, mental health issues, poverty, the military, inappropriate relationships with underage people, as well as homelessness and sex trafficking was brought up in that specific report. But for me, it paints such like a snapshot almost of what the issue is. And I feel like that's what I want to express is that initial report is a snapshot.
So just a small picture
Such
of a much larger.
Yes, so the final report will paint such a narrative and context of what is going on. And so if you were, outraged by that report,
if you didn't like the snapshot, you're not going to like the whole picture.
The whole picture.
What is your personal investment? Why are you in this invested so heavily?
Because it happened to me. And that's something that took me so long to realize. And I really struggled my entire youth life. My family was separated. My dad's side is Native Hawaiian and my mom was Japanese, and so I was brought up being Native Hawaiian, and I did not think I was Native Hawaiian, and that, kind of dual identity or not understanding my identity really allowed a predator to come in my senior year of high school and transform my entire life. And it just spun out where that one incident that happened to me led into years of, sex trafficking, substance use, mental health issues, run-ins with the law, and just the complete loss of me. Like, I did not want to exist anymore, and I could have very easily been a 100% missing or murdered person. And so that really spawned me to help others, because I know that there's others out there who feel the same way as I do, who feel like I'm not Native Hawaiian enough, I'm not this enough, I don't know who I am, where do I belong? And those are the vulnerabilities that predators will take advantage of, and they'll come in and they will tell you who you are. I was involved in abuse and trauma and trafficking for 10 years. So it was a really long time for me, and it was such an identity for me. You couldn't tell me that I was a victim. I was a trafficking victim especially. I allowed all that trauma to be my identity, and it was very hard to get out. And it took me many years and meeting other survivors of trafficking to understand not only what happened to me, but that wasn't me, because I took a lot of blame, guilt, and shame with me into the future. And so that's like really what motivated me. I'm like, I have to find other people, because it was those connections with other survivors that helped me find myself. The underlying feeling I had towards myself was, I don't want to be here. Like, this isn't right. I don't belong. Like, if this is life, then I don't want it. But there was a bigger part of me that just kept going, because obviously I'm still here. But there's so many people that I was alongside with who aren't. And that's really, really tough. But I feel like even though I didn't want to be there and the life was hard, there was just a piece of me that felt like I deserved to get out of this. I deserved to live. And eventually, like, I just kept focusing on that, and I left. And then outside, it took so long. It took another survivor looking at me and telling me, like, it wasn't your fault. You're worthy. I love you. All of those things, because those were things I had never told myself. And even outside of exploitation, I still kind of felt like the problem. Like, if only I had done something different, I wouldn't be here today.
There was a part of you inside of you,
Yeah.
the real Ashley, that stayed alive and fought for you, yes?
Yes, absolutely. And I kind of call that like the pocket of joy I held on to, because I felt like the people who were surrounding me were constantly trying to like steal that life and steal that joy from me, and I just held on to it. And that's kind of what I chase today. Is I call myself a person who chases joy. And even though I do really hard work, a big part of what I want to do for the survivors who are still there is infuse joy into their day, and prevent this from happening, and infuse joy into the lives of future generations. What traffickers are really good at is figuring out what needs they can fulfill within you. This is true in both sex and labor trafficking. So if your need is housing, they'll fulfill it. If your need is food, they'll fulfill it. Companionship, friendship, a job, they will fulfill that. And so I think that what's important for us as a community is that we can fulfill the needs of our community and really be there for one another, and that will kind of reduce the numbers of ways that traffickers will come in. When people think of traffickers, they often think of abduction, but out of the hundreds of survivors who I know, only 2 have been abducted. And the majority of survivors are going to be abducted by someone they know. And when I say that, I don't mean someone that they know their whole life. It could be someone who's come in
Somebody they just met.
Within a week,
Yeah, maybe somebody at that new job they started.
Yes,
something
who
like that.
comes in and creates that relationship, because it's a little bit easier to control someone who you have a bond to
Yes.
than someone that you have no control over.
Yeah. All right. So what I hear you saying, Ashley, is number one is normally it takes time. It doesn't happen like right away, because there's this attempt at building a relationship
Yeah.
to fill a need that they perceive that the person they're trying to get a hold of
Yes.
needs.
Yes.
And so that's one thing to look out for.
Yeah.
The second thing to look out for is, how can my family fill that need instead of some stranger? Because the strangers are out there looking for people who have a need to be filled, yeah?
So a big thing, especially with families, is just like listening to your kids and being that connection and that kind of bond for them.
Yeah.
We're all busy, and I myself, find situations where my kids are talking and I'm like, I don't even have time for this conversation. And I have to remind myself, if I don't have time for this, there's someone
who will.
Entire day is spent looking for people who are looking for that. And so I take the time for my kids, and not just my kids, but I try to be there for my kids' friends, and just be a good source of a good contact that they can go to that will listen, because I know other people are going to come in.
So actually what you just said is really critically important, and because you're talking about all you have to do is listen. We're not talking about going out and buying them a new bicycle.
Yeah.
We're not talking about going out and buying them a new car or a new TV set or a new iPhone. We're talking about taking the time to listen, to care. That's what's missing.
Yeah.
And if the the parents don't do it in the family, somebody out there, like you said, they have all the time in the world to show that they care and that they're willing to fulfill that empty feeling, yes?
Yeah.
So it doesn't take money.
It doesn't take money. And, I think when people also think of trafficking, and they think of someone coming in and showering someone with gifts, but no one, comes to someone and is like, here's a Louis Vuitton bag.
Right.
They are going to be like, you look sad, what's up? And really kind of come in with that. Or you look really nice today, and, see how they respond. And so it's simple interactions that kind of build upon each other and create these connections. And that's true with both sex and labor trafficking. I mean, labor trafficking, they're not going out there and capturing a bunch of people and bringing them to work for them, because that's not going to work. They are, setting out promises of what could happen if these people join them, and luring them over here, and then they flip the script. And so those are the things that people have to realize, is just like the connections. That's what traffickers are using. They're using connections and promises and those types of things to really make people trust them. The vulnerabilities are poverty, food insecurity, houselessness, mental health inaccess, and substance use. So when you start to see those in a kid, those aren't going to necessarily be red flags of trafficking, but that's when you should intervene, because that's kind of the perfect person, someone in foster care, someone without, family around, someone not watched. You have the typical vulnerabilities that people are looking out for, but you also have someone like myself who was very lost, and definitely like changing what I like to do, what I wanted to do, who I was, like all the time. And so that's a red flag too, of like, how can we help you find yourself? Because someone else will come in.
Wow, so this isn't about money. This isn't about how much money your family has or not.
No.
This isn't about how fancy a house you live in or not. This is about something totally different, about how you feel about yourself. And people who are wealthy, who have a lot of money, can feel as lost or more lost than somebody who has very little money, yeah? What about the parents that says, my kids are starting to withdraw from me? We used to talk, but now they're not talking to me so much. I'm trying to reach out to them, but they're not letting me in, and I feel like they're going into a different world. And I don't even know how to get into that world to reach them. What about that?
So for that question, I actually have two parts. So what I've done as a parent is that I have the hard conversations early, and I give my child a lot of resources. So I have put the suicide hotline in her phone. I have given her positive social media accounts to follow, and really given her the tools, because I know that kids don't always reach out to their parents, even my own.
And this
but
is
I want
even
her,
before?
Even before, but I want her to know that there's places to go. And then the second part is that those places to go have a responsibility to put out the information, through social media, through campaigns, through awareness, so that they can also impact, the children and adults to really know exactly what to do.
Okay, and that works, yes? That approach works?
It works as best as we can. I mean, ultimately, how we combat all of these issues facing our people is by revamping our community, higher
Sure.
livable wage, housing security, food stability. But I'll start with that, of really trying to have avenues for people to go when there are issues, you know.
Yeah, so what I hear you saying, Ashley, is that fundamentally, once again, it comes down to taking the time to care, and taking the time to reach out,
Yeah.
taking the time to not giving up, not quitting on that child. Yes?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And bettering our community as a whole. You know, I
Yes.
just believe in uplifting all of us so that we all are living a life that we deserve.
All right. So that means that if your kids are doing well with you,
Yeah.
maybe the next door neighbor's kids are not doing well with their parents.
Yeah.
Or maybe, the relative that lives, a few blocks away,
Yeah.
taking the time to reach out and going, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
How can I help? Being aware of that just beyond your family and looking at your extended family, your extended neighborhood type of thing.
That is, the ultimate what it means to be Hawaiian.
Exactly. Exactly.
Coming and returning back to who we are.
Yes.
We are a place where your family is who you invite in, and you extend your relationships beyond blood, and it's such a beautiful thing, and it's like returning to that would be part of the antidote.
What about the scenario where, something is already going on, the parents can tell that an adult is talking to one of their kids that shouldn't be, they've got their kid's ear, kid is listening to them, or the parents have discovered, some type of physical evidence that some activity is going on. If it's gone that far, what advice do you give to the parents at that point?
The advice is that there's so many resources out there. And the number one thing, if you suspect trafficking specifically, the National Human Trafficking Hotline, it's run by Polaris. They have a website that you can go to. I refer people to that because it has a whole form that you fill out, and it'll tell you exactly, what information they would need for a quality report. And I feel like that's such a good reference. And making that report, if you suspect trafficking, is really important. If your child is involved in other things such as drugs, there's resources for harm reduction and outreach and rehabs, and those interventions are really important. There's also a mobile unit, the CARES mobile unit, and that is really helpful if you uncover your child and they have something going on, some type of overdose or some type of mental breakdown. And these are also important for adults. It's not just children. If you have an adult child and you find that there's something wrong, you can use the same tools.
Wow, so there's some wonderful, valuable resources out there
Yeah.
that will actually come and help you.
Yeah.
They figure this out. They know the answers, how to extract people out of these situations. All you have to do as a parent is make contact with these organizations. Yes?
Yes, is reach out, and it doesn't guarantee that your child or adult will be saved. But for me, it's so important to make the reports for data collection. Calling Crime Stoppers. If there is an active emergency going on, obviously you would call 911. But making that report, it's silence and the lack of data that is hiding this issue. And so
that's what keeps it going.
That's what keeps
the
it going.
fuel that keeps it going.
So the more we report, the more even law enforcement and we as a community really understand, okay, where is the problem occurring and how is it happening?
Good. Ashley, I got to ask you this question.
Yeah.
What do you think it'll be like when we really start to get these things under control? How's it going to be for everybody?
I dream about that day, and I'm really honest in that all of the efforts that I do, I will probably never live to see the results. But the important thing is that I believe in a future where trafficking and substance use and poverty and food instability are not an issue for our Native Hawaiian people. And if I, spend my entire life trying, and then the next generation only has to spend half their life, then we've done something. So I just feel like I envision that future. But realistically, I probably won't see it. But
you
won't-
know it's coming.
But I won't stop.
Yeah.
But I won't stop.
Great. And that's what I was going to ask you. Please don't stop. This is where we have to leave it, Ashley.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being on Voices of Truth. Thank you for giving us and sharing with our viewers such valuable information that they can use to reach out to their family, reach out to their children, to hopefully prevent or stop these things that are going on. So please don't stop. Please keep doing what you're doing. Mahalo for being on Voices of
Thank
Truth.
you.
Mahalo to our viewers for joining Ashley and me here at Magic Island. And remember, you can watch us on the web 24/7 on voicesoftruthtv.com. And you can like Voices of Truth One-on-One with Hawaii's Future on Facebook. I'm Ehuke Kahu Cardwell for the Kiwani Foundation, along with Ashley here. And until next time, ahui ho!